See you again.
Good. Well, you know what? It's I'm glad you're wearing your tequila hat because I want to jump right into how's it going? Since last podcast we talked about speed and tequila.
Yeah.
I've been following you on Instagram. What's going on with your tequila stuff?
Yeah, it's going good. We've got sort of two sides of the house. We've got a consulting business where we work with, I don't know, 15 or 20 different tequila brands. We sort of built the craft tequila chamber of commerce to help those brands work together to increase their sales and their growth. My business partner Maddie and I sort of run that chamber of commerce, if you will, and then we're actually building a brand new thing which launches in 4 weeks called the Tequila Report, which is essentially Rolling Stone but for tequila. So website, newsletter, tour company, merch company, a whole bunch of other things, ratings, reviews, interviews. So we're building out like a digital publishing company just for the tequila industry.
You're totally like owning the category. You know that is
Oh, we're
that is
trying.
that is the association? Is it like an industry association? Like you're trying to raise up the marketing for the whole space, or
Yeah, that's the direction we're headed right now. It's sort of more like a YPO or EO, like where it's a collection of brand owners working together somewhat behind the scenes. But the trajectory is that it'll be sort of the Craft Tequila Association eventually.
yeah, it's funny. I did that with heli skiing. I
Yeah.
started with cat skiing, and then I started creating a banner. I started doing working with one company, and then I worked with. They said, "Wait, can you help me?" And I'm like, "Why don't I just market the whole space?" That opened up so many doors for basically a decade of getting free heli skiing. It was
Yeah.
amazing.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice. Well, the challenge is when you get industries, especially industries that have a lot of smaller entrepreneurial players, what my observation was, and you probably saw the same thing in the heliskiing, is that you've got all these organizations that are trying to solve the same business challenges, but they're trying to solve them by themselves, which is a very difficult, expensive, and slow way to solve a problem. So if everybody has the same issues, if you bring those people together and say, okay, well, who has a little better solution, then everybody benefits. They all move up faster. The next problem, somebody else is a little bit better at that. They solve it. They all move up a little faster. So that's what we're trying to do.
from a business strategy standpoint, I don't know if you can share this or not, but if I was an observer, for me, I'm like you're building an audience, you're understanding the space, you're marketing the space, you're seeing what works, you're consulting the space. Is your end game also that you might have your own brand and you have basically have your own market to go into?
Yeah, we get asked that a lot. No, I don't think I would do that for a couple of reasons. One, I don't want to compete against my clients and my friends,
Mhm.
and two, the tequila business is very, very capital intensive, and very, very time intensive. It is a hard business, and frankly, I don't want to work that hard. Not anymore, right? And it also requires a lot of travel because you have to go to lots of events,
Mhm.
lots of tastings. Got to go to lots of liquor stores and bars and restaurants and kind of pitch the tequila. And I travel enough as it is to give speeches. To then lay that much travel on top of it would be pretty impossible.
What would be the mix of passion to strategy? If like, because I know you and I first talked, it was like a passion. As you kind of started getting into it more.
Yeah.
If, when you really look back now, or really what your intention is it that this is like a passionate strategy, or is it like what's the percentage of mix of that?
It started off as 90% passion and 10%. This could be an interesting thing to do sometimes, and now it's probably 80% an actual company, and 20% passion, which tends to happen to me over time, right? I
Yeah,
turn my hobbies into businesses, and then your relationship to the hobby changes inexorably, right? And so the trick, at least for me and probably for others, is if you successfully turn your passion to a business, how do you maintain the passion?
interesting. Yeah, like I mean, with I did mine. I had Laundromat Studios, so I had a film production company, so that I've started writing, enjoying it, and then started marketing it. But the real value was content marketing.
Yeah,
Social media was new, and I suddenly created a new company called Laundromat Studios, and doing film production, and it did really great for like for a decade.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Uh, one of the things that's really because I've been dying to have this conversation with you, and since between the time from the last interview and now, as I published my book Groundswell,
I know, it's
thanks to
amazing.
you, you added 2 years to my book. It's a good and bad news thing. Because
Thanks.
remember, I sent you that you go, "There's some good
Yeah,
ideas here, but it's not really organized well."
yeah.
That journey from that response took me another 24 months to finally
I
get my
believe it.
book done.
I believe it. My fault. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. It's funny when you did that, I was gutted, but I feel like at the end of that, I now feel like I know how to write a book. I'm like already working on two other books, and they're
Amazing.
80% done.
Amazing. Yeah, and same advice, right? I mean, I think the perspectives are great, the ideas are great, but having done 7 books now, um, the sequencing is really crucial to keep the readers dialed in.
Well, one of
And I
I
think
think
that way anyway. I give somebody speeches, right? So I always think first thing, second thing, third thing, fourth thing, fifth thing, sixth thing, and it has to be in that sequence because if you get one out of order, then people lose the train. So I am disproportionately wired to look at content from that lens.
Yeah, I mean that's really what I did was I deconstructed the foundation, kind of like landing a plane. I started with the continent, then the country, then
Yeah,
the
nice.
country, then the city, then the street, right? And that's so now I use that formula really ongoing.
It's great.
One of the things that's changed for me though is I'm curious what your production, what you're doing is what that's a weakness for me is like the formatting of it, like
Mm.
kind of like or the structure of it. And so I use AI now and it's totally accelerating. It's organizing me really well. Are you using AI at all for any writing now or are you just keeping it pure?
No, not really for writing, and we probably won't for Tequila Report. But occasionally I'll use it for like little stuff, like help me with Instagram captions or things like that,
Yeah.
where I feel like my natural style of writing isn't conducive to success in that particular way. So I'll write out a caption or make some notes and then say, okay, turn this into something that Instagram is going to love, right? And kind of tweak it up that way. But I don't use it for too many big projects yet. We are using it for some other things, like on the new website for Tequila, where the graphical style that we've chosen for sort of the project overall is kind of a watercolor style. It sort of stands out. It's
Mhm.
a little bit different. It's got some more organic character to it, which fits the tequila narrative pretty well. So in that case, we take regular images or photos, right? And then we say to AI, okay, now apply a watercolor wash to this to make it look like a signature image for Tequila Report. So things like that we use quite a bit. Yeah,
Sounds like you're using it pretty judiciously. For me, of anything I write, I want if I use it for even formatting, I put the bottom formatted with Grok because I want it
yeah,
to be like I am writing this. I'm not mailing it in and using AI. You
exactly.
know, do you see that as being sort of one of the backlashes of AI is mistrust?
Totally. I actually wrote about this recently in my newsletter. It's one of the most interesting things I've ever seen in my long business career. Is there's this huge gap right now between enthusiasm for AI amongst business leaders and enthusiasm for AI amongst the customers that they're trying to serve. So the approximate numbers are like 63% of businesses say that AI is an imperative and makes the business better. And like 20% of customers are like, yeah, I want to use AI to interact with companies, right? So that's a 40 plus point gap, which is crazy. And my hypothesis, and there's some data to back this up, is that most of the customers who are AI suspicious on the theoretical basis, right? Then once you actually give them a good interaction with AI and it does save them time or makes it more accurate or sends them the right product at the right time or whatever the circumstances are, they're like, oh yeah, it's actually not so bad. Most people who are like no to AI are no to AI um, because they fear the disintermediation of humanity or whatever, or they just prefer to talk to a person, realizing that people get it wrong a lot more than AI gets it wrong. So I think over time, a lot of these objections will fade away. The same way you may remember back in the day when e-commerce first came out, right? People were like, "No, bro, I will never buy something over the internet. That is crazy. That is so risky. Why would I put my credit card on a website to buy a book? That's insane." And now, of course, e-commerce is a multi-trillion-dollar business, right? Eventually, people get over themselves and embrace it. I think that's what we're ahead. But right now, totally. There was an interesting article that got written in my local newspaper online recently, and the guy who wrote it said that he had some help from ChatGPT to organize the article, and people didn't care at all about what the article said. I thought it was really well done. They're like, well, if you use ChatGPT to write this, we can't trust anything that you say in here. And I'm like, guys, you're missing the point.
Right. I can kind of I get that sentiment a little bit because I here's an example. Like sometimes I'll see something someone's written and then I talk to them about it. And I had one example where I actually didn't even record the podcast because they didn't match up. They weren't matching up with what I saw.
Mm,
And I didn't call them out on it, but I felt like, and I afterwards I was like, you know what? I think they're using a lot of AI. It was like, and so I'm wondering for personal
Interesting.
brands, like where's that line of your reputation? Because word of mouth reputation is everything. I never want to be thought of as, for me, it's like that's why I'm really overly protective of it, because I just don't want people to think, these are my original ideas and my experiences. I'm not just mailing it in. So what's your thought on like that personal brand, not the process, like not doing
Yeah,
color change and that stuff, but
sure, sure. Well, I think it's actually an interesting perspective because I believe that personal brand and word of mouth and trust will matter more tomorrow than it does today,
Mhm.
and even more the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that. Because in a world that is increasingly beholden to robots, that kind of real human recommendation becomes all the more important. Furthermore, what large language models use to break ties, right? So if you ask them a question, they go out and they take their copy of the internet and say, all right, what do we know? And if there is a strong factual case to recommend X versus Y, they will do that because there's facts to back that up. But in most queries, especially something that's not price based or whatever, that's not math based, there aren't strong factual differences. So what they do literally is they go out and look for trust signals, right? They look for content, they look for testimonials, they look for reviews, they look for people saying nice things about people, etc. And that's what they use to break ties. So if you have a strong personal brand, an authentic, meaningful personal brand, actually AI just makes it even stronger. And I'll give you a personal example. Just last week, I had not one, not two, but three separate meeting planners hire me to give a speech for a considerable amount of money. And all three of them said they found me on ChatGPT.
What was the
Not
search?
Google, not Google, not word of mouth, best customer experience speaker or some
Oh,
such, right?
okay.
That kind of thing. And like, well, there's a lot of people who are good at it, but among the very best are Jay Baer, and here's why. Boom, and I'm like, there you go. But that's not because I am gaming the system. It's because I've been doing this for 33 years and making content and people saying nice things about me and writing books and writing 1,400 blog posts and doing 1,000 podcasts, literally 1,000 podcasts, right? That's a lot of trust signals for a large language model to pick up on.
Do you think there's going to be trust signals that are galvanizing trust? So, an example would be I use Medium, and it actually has a verification if I'm an author.
Yeah.
So, it
Yep.
actually verifies, it goes in Amazon and checks that I've literally written a book.
Yep.
And then I get that verification. And I notice that my search on ChatGPT and Grok has actually gone up because of that author signal. Do you
Brilliant.
think that's a future of like, remember Clout? Do you ever remember that
Of
app called
course.
Clout?
Yeah. I know Joe Fernandez really well, who started it. Yep.
Oh my gosh, like I almost feel like Clout should come back.
Yeah, well, and actually, Google had author rank for quite a while, and they got rid of it, unfortunately. And it was really useful, where they'd be able to say, okay, here are all the things that Scott has ever published on any site anywhere, and it sort of became like a whole authority bucket, almost like a Amazon author page, but across the totality of the internet. That was amazing. I was really sad when they got rid of it. Yeah, I completely agree. The authenticity signals are going to grow, and I think there's actually probably a pretty good business to be had to build and perpetuate some of those in categories where maybe they don't exist so far.
When we're talking, when we're kind of getting into this AI conversation a little bit, is when someone's listening and they're going, but I don't. There's a million people in marketing. What do you say to them? Going like, is it category, like getting niching down and finding like sustainable growth marketing is my within marketing? Like I really intentionally wanted to own that piece because it's kind of more narrow. Because marketing is too big, you're in it, and I can
Yep.
beat you out. Growth marketing, there's other major players. So I kind of went to sustainable growth, and it kind of fits in with my IP. What do you say to them? Like, is it category? How would you help somebody kind of like go, how do you create your
Yeah.
visibility at a
Yeah.
smaller scale?
So it's different for different businesses, but generally speaking, you wanna get more narrow. You're exactly right. There's riches in the niches, right? There's no truer phrase. And so you either want to niche it down on geography, on industry, or on execution, right? So you can be the marketing person for Rhode Island. You can be the marketing person for New England, but mostly B2B, or only for dry cleaners, or hearing care providers or whatever. Or you can be like, yeah, there's a marketing is a pretty big topic, right? There's a lot of things that include marketing, and even more so now than ever before. You can be the marketing AI specialist, right? Or if you want to get really specific, you can do all of those. You can be the marketing AI specialist for dry cleaners in Rhode Island, right? And now you have a pretty small addressable market, but you've pretty clearly defined who your ideal customer is at that point too.
And you've done so. Going back to your tequila example, one of the ways that I'm looking at it, and tell me if this sort of resonates with you or you're in disagreement or whatever, is like I look at its brand programs and campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
That middle layer programs are like it's like a show. If I have friends, I could be on multiple channels, but I own the show, I
Yep.
own the content, the program. That also, I think, might be another way of creating visibility when it kind of bumps up against your category.
Yep.
So in tequila, when I look at tequila and Jay, you have a whole other category that you can be found, discovered, and actually be an authority on.
Yeah.
Is
So much, so much so, it's so crazy. I know we touched on this thing a little bit last time we talked, but it's even more so now. I've written all these books and been giving speeches now for 18 years, have been in marketing for 33 years, uh, and nobody cares, really. But you start making tequila videos every time I walk on a plane. Oh, you're the tequila guy all the time. And when I do a speech, I just did this a speech 2 weeks ago in Rhode Island, and I walk off stage, and this guy comes up. He's like, "You walked out, and I could not figure out what was going on because I had no idea that you ever talked about business. All I've ever seen is your tequila videos." And I'm like, "Why is the tequila guy the keynote for our conference?" And it like completely blew his
Yeah,
mind,
we
right?
did talk about that last time
Yeah,
because I had the windsurf.
yeah.
People know me from the snowboarding and the heli skiing.
Yes, exactly,
Right.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's even more true now, and it is unusual. Like most people don't build out a fully like effectuated second thing the way I have. It's
Mhm.
usually they have a thing and then they've got some frosting on their cake. I've sort of decided to build two cakes, which is a little unusual and frankly a shit ton of work. But I'm one of those people who are sort of like in for a penny, in for a pound, you know?
Well, it's like I actually think in personal brands, people that lean into their passion and go, what's your unique point of view or premise, your passion and your purpose in terms of like what you're delivering, that's a pretty powerful, unique way to get visibility because I think
Yep.
that's what's missing is a lot of times, hey, there's tons of marketers, but a marketer that happens to love bowling, that's could be interesting, you know?
People remember it like crazy. I mean, people remember two things about me in the speaking side of the business. Yeah, they know I talk about marketing and customer experience, whatever, but there's a lot of people who do that. And some are as good or better than I am. Uh, but everybody remembers I always wear plaid suits on stage and tequila, right? It is such a word of mouth device and sort of a memory making device that even if the people who hire me to give speeches don't hire me to do tequila tastings, although sometimes they do, it doesn't matter because they all remember it. And that's why it's in my introduction, right? So when I walk out on stage, the written introduction talks about, yeah, and he's also the number 2 tequila influencer in the world. Because then the whole audience is like, wait, what? Right? It just sort of gets them leaning forward in their chair a little bit, which also helps as you walk out on stage. And the first thing I always say is, I just want to clear that up on the number 2 tequila influencer in the world non-celebrity division, right? So it's not me and The Rock or me and Kendall Jenner. It's me and some guy in Los Angeles, and that's how I start the talk. It just sort of, it's a little self-deprecating, answers a question they just had in their head, etc.
What do you say to somebody that's like, hey, you've got the passion, you've got, I know him, but the third piece that I know that you really lock in on is whenever you're on the show, you have a really strong point of view. You and I did with talk triggers.
Yeah.
You and I did with speed, which I still
Mhm.
want to talk a little bit about,
And
where's speed at right now?
Yep.
But what do you see about premise? Because I think that's something that's largely misunderstood. I know that Jay Kunzo, he's mad, like he's really great at really articulating that, but what's your point of view on that?
Yeah. So for me, it is a couple of things on the business side. It's There is no right answer. There's only an answer that's right now. So my whole career is to figure out what customers want and give businesses a formula for delivering that in a way that outperforms their competitors in a 24-month window. But the things that I told you to do 2 years ago won't work now because everybody's done it, right? Everything that I tell you, you'll do eventually, and then it'll be commoditized, and then it won't work anymore. It'll still work, but it won't be a differentiator. So my whole job is to figure out what the next differentiator is. And even since we chatted last time when the differentiator was speed, we're getting to the point now with AI where that is also being commoditized, right? That it's easier than ever to be fast because the robots will do the work for you. So now the new topic and the new speech that I'm giving this year, next year, is about humanity. Is about the fact that as we interact more and more with automation and robots and AI, what actually stands out, what really differentiates you as an individual or your company as a business, is the bespoke human touch, right? Is the things that most people won't do because they're hard or because they're individualized or because they require some actual effort and humanity and empathy. Those things matter more than ever. So that's the new speech that I'm giving. It's called Humankind, and people love it because it's exactly how everybody feels. They just haven't articulated it yet.
Yeah, there's a resonance to it. So I wrote an article about that, which is valuing effort. It's
Yeah,
like, it's like when I hear someone come to my meeting dinner and they go, "This is from a lamb that's from Nepal," and they're describing the effort they went through to make it so
yeah,
meaningful,
yep,
right?
yep,
Is now that's the balance. That was actually funny. You went right into my thought, which is, before we're talking about speed, and everybody values speed until you don't, and then when it's too fast, you don't value it because it felt like it was too easy. Like, whether I'm writing a book, it took 2 months versus mine doing for 4 years. Like,
yep.
is effort not a value, a new emerging value that's going back to
Absolutely,
the old days?
for
Like,
sure. Great point. I completely agree. The hard part with so a couple things on speed. Yes, speed is still more important than ever, but you can be too fast, right? So when you're too fast, it diminishes trust. So the example I always use on stage is I went to a Mexican restaurant and I ordered enchiladas, and they brought me the chicken enchiladas in like 90 seconds. You probably had this happen at a
I've
Mexican
had, yeah,
restaurant where you're like, like this is too fast. Like, how did you make enchiladas that quickly? And you're like, oh, well, that was fast. But then you're like, well, I was fast, right? Like all of a sudden it goes from like, oh, I'm pretty psyched to like, this is sus. And so too fast diminishes trust. So what you want is like the magic formula, which is slightly faster than people think, but not so fast or like this is a robot, right? That's the kind of window. Um, but then in terms of effort, I totally agree. The problem with effort as a differentiator is that it's very difficult in many cases to perceive effort without being told. So you have to tell me that the lamb came from Nepal, etc., which is
mhm.
a whole nother loop in the communication chain than just I experience how fast it is. It's hard to experience effort. You have to be shown effort or told effort, and that makes it a little bit more challenging on both sides of the equation to use it as a differentiator, if that makes sense.
It does. It's a little confusing because also someone could go, "Well, you're not really efficient," and then
Right.
it's like, is that why it's more effective? Like, then that's all has a
Yeah,
negative connotation as
exactly.
well, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah. Back in the day, we used to do a lot of web strategy consulting, right? And people would say, "Hey, take a look at my web analytics, and we've had, the average user session is like 7 minutes." And I'd be like, "Well, there's two reasons for that. Either A, people love your content and they're clicking all over the website, or B, they can't find anything and they're just like completely click back. Nope, that's not it. They're totally lost on the website, right? So that's when you got to go beyond the metric and look at the actual click stream to figure out what's actually happening there. But I love where you're headed with this effort idea. One of my favorite examples, I talk about this in the new speech. I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy and magic. Because both of those disciplines are similar enough to what I do on stage that I always learn something from those performers. And one of my favorite magicians is Penn and Teller because not only are they incredible magicians, but their whole shtick and their whole package is really interesting and funny and unusual. But Teller, who's the short one, who never speaks on stage but speaks off stage and is quite erudite and a really brilliant man. There's a trick that he does in their show, in their Las Vegas show, and it's quite spectacular. It took him 22 years of daily practice to get good enough at that trick to put it in the show for the first time. 22 years of daily practice to ever show it to an audience, which sounds absurd. But they asked him about that. And his quote, I think, is really important, especially in this era of everything being half assed and robotic. He said, sometimes magic is simply working harder at something than anybody would reasonably expect. And that quote means an awful lot to me. Because one
Love
thing,
it.
a lot of people are smarter than me, a lot of people are more compelling than me, but very few people will outwork me. And if you can keep that skill set, you'll be in pretty good shape.
I love Tony Robbins has a similar one, which is you get rewarded in public what you work privately
Yes.
over years in private.
Yep. So
You
true.
know, it's funny because I look at where we're going with AI, and what prompted I don't know if you recall, I when I sent the note, hey, let's do a podcast.
Yep.
You did this really great interview with I can't remember, it was for Monday maybe or something like that. I think it was
Monday.
Monday.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Monday.com.
you said there's the single biggest thing that's going on right now is like word of mouth that comes out of your pie hole, right? Like,
Yep.
and
Yep.
I was like, yes, because right now, do you not think that the direction that everything is going with the amount of content overwhelm, the amount of disbelief and mistrust? This is the premise of my book, actually, my new book I'm writing called Title Shift. We're leaving the age of attention. We're in this trough of mistrust, and we're moving to this age of trust, and we need to create trust signals and different things. And the only thing that's going to sustain is word of mouth. What you and I first started talking about way back in the day, right? Like,
It's the one thing you can't fake, right? This is what I
yeah,
talk about in the new speech, right? Like I can take my computer and my subscriptions and I can make you believe anything I want, right? Especially with the new video, right? Whether it's Sora or things like that. I mean, it is astonishing and scary what you can do with those tools for essentially free. So you just play that game out a year, and what we see now with the media and the balkanization of belief on in politics and in other parts of our lives, people aren't going to believe anything, not at face value. The only thing that you will believe is an actual human being making a recommendation to another human being while they are standing in front of you, and that can't be faked. And consequently, when that happens, it will take on such greater importance from a persuasive standpoint than it ever has in the past. Word of mouth is more important today than it has been literally in any day in the history of the world. And it will be more important every single day that you draw breath because this AI genie ain't going back in the bottle.
okay, so I totally agree. The question is, someone's listening to this and going, but how do I create that?
Well, you got to do something. This goes back to my Talk Triggers book from 4 or 5 years ago. You got to do something that people want to have a conversation about. And this is where sort of the AI world gets crosswise with the word of mouth world because people don't talk about iteratively better, they talk about inherently different. Like all human beings are wired in their head the same way in this respect. We are wired to ignore things that are average and discuss things that are different. And so most of your AI executions, there are some things that are fantastical and phantasmical and amazing, but most of your AI executions are the same shit 10% better, the same shit 10% faster, the same shit 10% more efficient. And that's great, right? Especially from an efficiency standpoint. But what I talk about in this new speech, Humankind, is that none of your customers are going to say, hey, man, I got to tell you about this chatbot I used. Like that's not going to happen, right? So the human touches, the things that require effort, as you mentioned, the things that require effort, the way Teller talks about, the things that like Chewy.com does with sending you an oil painting of your pet if you lose a pet, like these are the kind of things that people can't help. They can't help but tell other people about what happened to them. And is that easy to execute as a business? No, it's not easy at all. But that's why it works. See, people want it to work and be easy. That's not that's not the success formula, right? I've seen very, very, very few people in personal branding or real companies or any other respect who are really successful and don't work very hard. It just doesn't happen very often.
So one of my in my book I write in Groundswell, and by the way, thank you for your contribution to it. Is there's three layers to creating this word of mouth wheel, which is if you just move products to service or you do something that's very transactional,
Yep.
there's no word of mouth happening there. But if you do emotion, there is some. That's the next change. I can change because you change my emotion. But the ultimate is transformation. And when you talked about that Chewy, you're transforming whatever I thought my pet provider could be, or Uber. Like I want to tell everyone because I never would have thought of using my phone to get a stranger to pick me up. Like, it's
Yeah.
transforming the experience. Is that like, because to me, I'm going, because it's a sort of take up. I got that idea really thanks to you with the talk triggers conversation,
Mhm.
which is going, it's not just you're transforming that interaction, but transforming the delivery or something. Do you have any other ways that someone's listening is going, I want to be able to like build this, like
Mhm.
manufacture the run, so to speak? How
Yep.
can I do that? Like, what are the pieces that you see that are really that we can leverage AI, or it's just you just have to operationally do, or like what do you see?
Yeah, I think part of it is just changing your mindset about what business you're actually in and where conversations come from. You know, Chewy is not in the art business, right? They're not in the oil painting portrait business. They're in pet supplies. But yet they don't worry about that, right? They use this device, this will give you an oil painting to completely transcend the transaction, right? To make this transformation that says our relationship between us as a company and you as a customer is so much deeper, richer, and more nuanced than just do we sell you dog food? And that same playbook can be used by any business in any category in any place in the world. But the transformation first has to come from within. You have to first say, I believe that if I interact with my customers in a way that they don't expect, in a way that isn't based on my core products and services, that that will give me a better chance of turning them into volunteer marketers than if I don't do that. But I also have to acknowledge that that is not going to happen instantaneously. I also have to acknowledge that that's not going to be free. But I can tell you firsthand, secondhand, and third hand that a successful word of mouth program is without question the most efficient way to gain customers and grow a business, period. Right? I can't remember if we talked about this last time or not, but one of my favorite quotes is from Robert Stevens, who co founded Geek Squad, the services arm of Best Buy.
Mhm.
And he and I did an event together many years ago. And he was on stage and he said, look, advertising is a tax paid by the unremarkable. And I was like, what? Right? Because I was like knee deep in buying and selling digital ads in those days. And he's like, look, advertising serves a purpose, but wouldn't it be better if your customers did that job for you for free? And that one utterance from that guy kind of sent me on a 20-year journey to word of mouth and experiences.
I've heard that quote too, and we didn't mention it last time. I kicked off my TED talk with that quote.
Oh, it's amazing. Good.
And it's about you remark about it. That's the
Yep.
first phase. When
Yep.
people remark on things that are remarkable.
Yep.
And if you and I give the story of this potato that was so amazing, that was so undersold. It wasn't even highlighted, but it was. I couldn't help but telling everyone. In fact, it even made its way to a TED talk. And all they did was they transformed what I thought a potato could be.
Yeah.
And when I think
And
about
it
what you
wasn't
said,
wasn't a slightly better potato, right? That's the key.
oh, it was like I don't even. There's I would have a T-bone steak or that potato. I take that potato.
Yeah.
And I love steak.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
when you talked about Chewy and you said, but business really in, what I went to with that was we love your pet like you do.
Mhm.
That's how it felt. When I saw the one video clip you had in your keynote
Mhm.
talk, I actually got emotional because my dog just
Yeah.
recently died, and I'm like, oh, like
Yeah.
I'm like, ouch. I go, you guys, it makes me feel like you love my pet as much as I did.
Yep.
Maybe
Absolutely.
that's where the business they're in.
Yeah. I mean, I think their business is in the. I mean, they're in the business of making pet owners happier through pets, right? The products and services is just a conduit to that, right?
Right.
The other day, I was doing an event for a very large company that sells life insurance, and I said, look, you're not in the insurance business, right? You're in you're in the empathy business because the only time somebody ever thinks about you is when they're thinking about dying or when somebody actually died, right? In between those points, no one's like, hey, I wonder how my life insurance is doing. Like you're out of sight, out of mind. I said, you're in the empathy business. The policy is just the vehicle for that. And you'd be better off keeping that in mind, right? And interacting with customers accordingly.
How do you make, like, say, electrical, right? No one cares until the lights go out. how do you make people care when there's like in between that service,
Yeah.
there's nothing like how what do you do to kind of like bridge that and keep the emotional connection?
Yeah, and that's where I think you really want to rely on content marketing or some kind of program like that where you're interacting with customers in between actual transactions, whether
Mhm.
it's education or humor, or hey, we're just gonna, we're gonna do a newsletter every week that gives you the Little League baseball scores in your town because there's no room for it in the newspaper anymore. And we're just going to do that as a public service. And it's brought to you by your electric company. It's just things like that. Again, you're transcending the transaction, right? You're not in the electricity business. You're in the benefiting the community business. The electricity is just a byproduct.
So benefiting the community, it's a great segues. Again, you're like feel like you're reading my mind. So community, like I'm actually in a community with Mark Schaefer. I'm going to see you. I get to Tennessee in spring. I'm
Yeah,
part of his community, and I've got my own virtual community. I've got about 1,000 members. I'm about to launch my app here in the next couple of weeks, and
amazing.
it's been really insightful to do that journey. And one of my thoughts that I'm curious to kind of hear your feedback on is this maybe possibly, because it's one area where there's no AI, there's no algorithm, and there's no ads. Is this really maybe what I'm calling trust circles in my book? Is these trust environments where word of mouth can go on rails a different way. What's your thought on virtual community and its play? And I just like to kind of finish our talk with just talking about community.
Yeah, I think it's a masterful strategy and one that can yield huge dividends for any organization. I don't know that the the unit economics of it are enough to propel businesses solely based on community. Meaning, I don't know that you can say, I'm only going to sell to this community and that those are my 1,000 true fans, right? It can definitely work in some businesses. But I think in most businesses, you need to have your regular customer base, and then hopefully you pull them into the inner circle. And obviously, that's a very common tactic in digital product sales and things like that. But I think it can happen in other industries as well. I've done a lot of credit union work recently, and a lot of these credit unions, I'm saying, hey, come up with the inner circle of the credit union. A credit union is already a club, make it a special club and then a special club, right? To give people concentric trust circles like you're talking about to make them feel more part of the bosom of the brand. I think it can work in every business, but I don't think it can work as your only way of monetizing your business always. It depends on the category of business.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes like that word's overused. Like people go, "Well, let's just add a community and slap it into our business." I don't think it
Right.
really works. Like,
Right.
I
Yeah.
think
We'll
you
add a
have to have a
discussion board.
reason. Like, they have to be on a journey together. You have to have like, so what I'm
Shared
kind of
purpose, right?
coaching.
It starts with shared purpose. There has to be
Yeah,
something that we're like, why do we even have a community, right? So there has to be a rationale that everybody is signed on for, and that's not the product, right? It's something deeper than that.
where my mind's going is the future is collabing and collaboration, where you don't really try to make it about your business. You try to make it about a category, a topic, like you did with tequila,
Yep.
where you're kind of congregating everybody under a vision of a journey or an outcome or an impact or some kind like that, and that's where you open up your competition, like you
Yep.
work with your competitors or something. I think that's where it's going because it's getting harder and harder to get the noise happening on say a LinkedIn or a social media channel, and it becomes a tailing pond that you can market to, but it's not about marketing. That's where I think a lot of people get it wrong. Is I mean, I don't know what your thought is, but like, if soon as you build the community, going, well, now I'm going to create an area, I'm just going to market to them. I think that largely fails because that's not where word of mouth lives when I'm being sold to all the time. What's your experience or your point of view on just application of community?
You're exactly right. I mean, if you're building a community solely so that you can have a more efficient vehicle for purchase, that's not really a community, right? So Chris Brogan had a quote many years ago in Trust Agents, which is still a incredible book in that category, one of the best ever,
Sorry, did you
really.
say Chris Brogan?
Yeah.
I'm going to
Uh,
grab that book.
yeah, it's amazing. He and Julian Smith wrote it in the early days of social media, and it's still one of the best books ever on the topic. And Chris said the only difference between an audience and a community is the direction the chairs are facing. And I
Mm.
really like that quote, right? Like if the chairs are faced inwards as a community, if the chairs are faced towards the speaker, then it's not a community, it's just an audience. And I think that's the mistake a lot of people make, both personally and in businesses. They think they have a community, but all they've done is aggregate an audience. It's not the same thing, right? If you're still holding the microphone every time, it's not a community, right? It's an audience. The communities that work are those that are collaborative, that the community members are the ones who are in charge of the community, not the owner of the community. And that requires you to relinquish control, and that's not always comfortable for people. But if you really want people to love you, it can't be only about you.
Love it. With the few minutes that we have left, if there's three things that most people are missing, they're not aware of, it's sort of like kind of it's not on the radar unless you're really knee deep in it, of navigating the future of word of mouth and this world of AI and all this stuff. What would be three things that you'd have people sort of lean into?
Well, I think the first one is just understanding, because of the things we talked about here, that word of mouth, which has been important since cavemen, is literally going to be more important every day. Like, that is not fake. That is a real statement. And consequently, it needs to be more important to your own success path than it ever has been. I wish I would have written Talk Triggers now instead of 5 years ago, because all the things that have happened since then have just made that whole thing more important. So embracing the importance of word of mouth is step one. Step two is understanding that while you think that word of mouth only impacts other humans, because of the way large language models work, word of mouth and trust assets, as you've talked about in your writing about, is actually just as, if not more important, for your success within AI, right? So not only does it help you with humans, it also helps you with robots, and that's pretty spectacular. And then the third thing is, we touched on this as well, like, there's no shortcut to true word of mouth, right? You have to do something that people didn't expect, and that could mean you're faster than they thought, or you're more effort than they thought, or it's more spectacular than they thought, or it's the world's greatest potato, or whatever the circumstances are. But word of mouth doesn't come from being 15% better. It doesn't. It won't. It never will. No one ever says, like, you know what, that was slightly better than I expected. Let me tell you a story about it. That's why, if you look at the math, that's why you never see 3-star reviews. You don't see them, because what's the point of writing them, right? Reviews are ones or fives, because ones and fives are a story. Ones and fives,
Right, right.
all a review is word of mouth with shelf life. That's all it is. It's just word of mouth with shelf life, right? And so that's why you don't see threes, because why would you take the time to write it? There's no story in that. So word of mouth, one of the things that sucks about word of mouth as a discipline is the phrase word of mouth. If we would have way back 40 years ago said, you know what we call this? Stories about my business. What you need
You'll
is
all be
more
better off.
what we need is more stories about your business. You're like, oh yeah, we do need that. But when you say word of mouth, people's brains like kind of freak out. They're like, I don't know if I can figure out how to do that. I can't measure it, whatever. You need more people telling stories about your business. And they're not going to tell stories based on, like, yeah, it was $10 cheaper. Like, nobody gives a shit. It's got to be something more impactful than that.
Thank you for that. The tying in with the idea of time. I'm writing about this in my book. The way I'm describing is it's like a trailer, a movie trailer. And I see a trailer. It's like marketing, advertising. It's amazing. It's like the most best trailer, like the Phantom Menace. And I saw it, but I went to the movie and I was so disappointed. And it was like I couldn't get through the first little bit, and then that happens a few times, and then I get reluctant. I don't trust trailers. I don't trust marketers. I don't trust the
Yeah.
marketing. Then I go to the, like you said, I go to the reviews, and then I go watch a Rotten Tomato review of the show, and I realized it was like a 10 out of 10, and it sucked. Why? There's a bunch of 12-year-olds liked it, and that's why they
Mhm.
gamified it or whatever. It's like gamifying. So we don't trust reviews anymore. But then somebody that knows me recommends a really obscure movie, and I love it. And that's where I see the future of word of mouth is, like, we're kind of going back to, you have to almost create, like, where that's where maybe AI can come in, is like, and the whole reason I'm doing that is because I don't want to waste 15 minutes looking at a bad movie. Like, we have arguments, me and my
Yeah.
wife, about
Yeah.
what movie to watch. She's going, check the IMDb. Like, we're trying to protect
Same.
our time,
Same. Yep.
you know? And isn't that kind of like goes back to the speed discussion, is like word of mouth, actually, most people think it's a longer form, but in fact, it rapidly, I think, increases connectivity with your brand.
Yeah, you're so right that once you can't trust the reviews aggregators, then you have to rely on individuals, right? You have to say, okay, I can't trust IMDb, I can't trust Rotten Tomatoes, but this guy Phil, right, who's on my softball team, he and I got really similar tastes in movies. So now Phil is my guy, right? So it used to be, I might write about this at some point. It used to be wisdom of the crowds, right? So the idea is we crowdsource opinion, and we use the aggregate as truth. But if you can't trust the crowds, then you almost have to deconstruct that, right? So almost as like we're moving away from wisdom of crowds back to wisdom of the individual. And to me, that's a really interesting trend.
Yeah, you know, the way I'm describing it is a cycle. The cycle is back in the old days when we were pioneers, we had to protect ourselves and we had to be very judicious about our resources, our time. And you know, I'm putting my arm around Farmer Bob going, do I trust Farmer Bill? And he's like, well, he's a little slow to pay, but
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I don't do anything without my community give me the go ahead, right? Like
Yeah.
I feel like we're going back to that because we're trying to protect ourselves,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. I completely agree. This has been super fun. Always a pleasure to talk to you. I'm totally psyched with what you're working on too. Keep me posted.
I will, and I'll send you a manuscript to get your feedback. I'd love to hear
Please.
it.
Yeah. I'm not
Where
going
can everybody follow you? And sorry, I did interrupted you.
It's okay. I'm not going to cost you 2 years this time.
Yeah, no, I'm going to be way faster this time. Where would you like people to follow you?
You can find me online at jbaer.com. All the social media is the same places, pretty easy to find. And then for tequila, find me on Instagram. It's tequila jbaer.
Awesome. Thank you, Jay, and thank you everyone for listening. That's another episode of the Groundswell Origins podcast. Until next time, mahalo.